recording. And I'll just give another intro here. So this is Frederick Kenniston from Axiom, and this is the How to Become a MicroStation Guru webinar. And like I said before I started recording, its viewpoint is to show you things in MicroStation that you can use to solve problems in a production environment. In other words, I can't make you a MicroStation Guru by snapping my fingers, but I can show you things that with a little bit of work and also in looking at solving problems that you're running into in the production environment right in your immediate environment, it's going to make things down the road easier and easier for you to help solve things, and people will come to you when they run into other things, say, hey, I know you helped us with this particular thing in MicroStation in our production, and maybe you can help solve this too. So the utilities menu in V8i is the main area I'm going to concentrate on, but I'll also cross over to Connect. Now in Connect, as I mentioned just before I started recording, here's the utilities toolbar off of the drawing workflow here. And this has most of the things I'm going to show you in V8i, but there's additional things under the File menu Tools area, and I'll cover that as I cross those things that are also in V8i here. So we'll go to utilities first, and then the first thing here is key in. Now, when I click that, this is your key in browser. Often you'll see it like an input field here, and it'll either be docked at the top or the bottom or something like that, but you can pull it off. And then this allows you, similar to how the AutoCAD environment for years was command line oriented, it still is now, but it has more GUI orientation as far as icons in AutoCAD. But MicroStation has always had the ability to give or type in commands through this key in browser here, similar to how AutoCAD initially was oriented and still is for the most part to this day. Pretty much anything that you can do in MicroStation with the interface, you can do through key in commands. And if you pull on the bottom of this key in browser, it gives you a little more of the window. So the first field here is just the input field where you type in commands. The second area here on the left, this is the actual commands themselves. You pull down and you'll see you can either select them from the menu or you can type them in here, split, for example. And then notice that. So I'll go place here first. I'll type place. And then notice this next area then gives you an argument or an additional thing that you can add to the command. So place, if you wanted to do place line, for example, you could select it here and then press your enter key, and it would put MicroStation into place line mode. If you look here in the lower left in your status area, it says place line, enter first point. And then you could place your first point, place your last point, reset, and you just issued and then utilized the place line command, or initiated it, I should say, from the key in browser. Also, if I pull down further, it gives you a list of commands, a history of things that have been typed into the key in browser. This will become more important as I show you how you can use the key in browser and the key in commands themselves to help automate or make things a bit easier and more efficient in working with MicroStation interface proper. So one thing you can do here is also, in addition to placing lines and placing other elements and things like that, you can also handle view attributes. So if I go to the hidden menu here off view 1, click the little black square there, and then click view attributes. So you see here for view 1 and all the other views as well, I could then manipulate. Oh, I clicked the wrong button there. There we go. Where'd it go? I lost it. Let me go. View attributes again. There we go. Now, from here, you can click on things like text. And notice it's on now. That's why it's colored there. And if I click on it, it'll toggle it off. So you see here on the right side of my screen that the text turned off. And if I click it again, it'll turn on. Now, sometimes things related to plotting, people will need to turn certain things on or off. Sometimes they'll have a level with notes related to the production of the drawings that they want to turn off in a view, because that's the view they're going to plot from, and they don't want those notes showing up in the plots. So they might do something to turn text off in that particular view, or turn a particular level off, or something like that. All those things, including just turning text on or off and tags and things like that, you can actually do through key in commands. I can turn text on and off in the view attributes. So here's text here. So now if I go to my key in browser, if I go set, and then if I scroll down, you see I can put text in here, but I can just type it in too. So we'll go set text, and then I'll type off. And you'll see here on the far right, here's one of the arguments that I can use. So I'll press enter, and then notice here in the lower left, it says select view. Now, it doesn't know, I mean, with the mouse-driven interface, I can just click in the view and it would select the view that I click in, and then it would turn the text off in that particular view. But for the key in command, you have to tell it with the key in command what view that you want to turn this text off in. So I'll go cell, which is short for select, and then view. That's kind of a combination of commands of select and then view. And then you type 1. That's the view I'm currently in that I want to turn the text off in. But you could then put the other views that you want also as well. Press enter, then notice it turned text off in the view. And then update 1. This is necessary because in the interface for saving the setting later, when you then reopen the design file, this is necessary. And that just updates the view, just in case when you turned it off, it didn't actually update the view. And now, if in order to save the setting that you want for this particular view, in MicroStation, when you change settings like this in view attributes, notice it's still showing it, it's on here, but it actually isn't, because we can see the text is off here. Then you have to tell it to save the settings. Now, the key in command for doing that is file design, and this actually comes back from before MicroStation existed in the Intergraph days. And it just makes it, it's basically from the idea of that you're filing your piece of work. So I press enter, and then that saved the settings. Now, if I close my view attributes and then go back, and then you see now the text here is off. So yeah, that was a number of commands that I needed to do to be able to then make the change in this one design file. But the reason I'm showing you that is you can use key in commands that I just used here to create basically through something called a batch processor, which I'll show you in a little bit, to string together commands to make changes to things like this over a number of design files at the same time. In other words, if you needed a text turned off in a certain view for plotting or for some other purpose, or you needed some other thing turned on or off in your view attributes over any number of files in one or more views, then you could do a batch process if it was hundreds, thousands, even tens of thousands of files, and you could process them in one fell swoop with MicroStation through the use of key in commands to make those types of changes to design files. So that's one aspect of key in commands, and you can use them to make changes in the current design file you're in, or like I said, through the batch processor to any number of design files at the same time. Now, in addition, if I go to my workspace and notice I've got function keys here. Now, function keys can also use key in commands. Now, one thing I'm going to do is show you this. I'm going to first go back to my view here, and I'm going to undo my text. I'm going to just turn the text back on here. And view attributes, turn text on. There we go. And I'm going to save my settings. All right. So now when I go back, workspace, function keys, so I can assign key in commands to the function keys. I've actually done that already to function key 12. You see F12 here, it says AccuSnap toggle. So I'm going to close this for the moment, and I'm going to use that key in command here. So notice if I go to place a line, and I'll zoom in here a little bit. If I place a line now, AccuSnap is currently on, and as I get near this circle here, you see it's going to snap to this little circle here or to the center of it. Now, depending on what I was trying to do, if I needed to place a line near these points, but not actually on the element or at the center, then with AccuSnap on, the way it currently is, it makes it kind of difficult. But with a key in command, I could say AccuSnap, and then notice I have different items here. I'm going to put toggle. That's one of the commands. And if it's on, it'll turn it off. And if it's off, it'll turn it on. So I'll just press enter here now. And now when I'm placing the line, notice it doesn't auto snap or AccuSnap to any of the points, the circle or that center. And if I needed to place the line here, then I press, and it's done. And now I can go back, I can click it here in the history, and it gives me that command back in the key in browser. And then I press enter again, and it turns AccuSnap back on. And then I go back, and now it'll snap to the points that AccuSnap will allow me to snap to. So that's one way you can use key in commands. And if I go back now to my function keys, I could take that text here, AccuSnap toggle, and I did this earlier, but I'll show you how it's done, and then go back to workspace, function keys, F12, and then you just paste that key in command that you want to use into the function key area. And then you click OK. And now with F12, I can do the same thing as opposed to typing in the command. So I go to place the line again. And as I get near the point, you see AccuSnap is on. I'll press F12. Now it's off. I'll place my line. And then I'll press F12 again. Go to place the line. And now it snaps to the points. So that's another way to help make things more efficient in the MicroStation interface, where you can then make things more efficient for a particular designer or a group of designers to add things to function keys that they commonly need to do, or that would make it faster and easier for them to push out production documents. In addition to that, if I go to Workspace Button Assignments, you can also do the same thing for button assignments. Notice you have Shift plus data, Alt plus data. All these other items that you see here for button assignments, you can also add key in commands to. So if you have AccuSnap toggle and you want to assign it to one of these buttons on multi-button mouse or puck as they call it, then you could do that using the different Alt, Control, Shift keys, and then put the command here, copying it from the key in browser to help, again, make things a bit more efficient for putting production drawings together. All right, so that's key in commands and also using them with function keys and button assignments. But now if you get to the point where you go, okay, this may be useful, or I might be able to utilize this in some fashion, how do I know what key in commands are available to me? Well, you do that through MicroStation's help. If you go to help and notice it says tool index, you click that, and that opens the MicroStation help file, which actually on my system it crossed the monitors, but then it also opens this little tool index dialog box. This, as I scroll down, you see it's all of the MicroStation key in commands. So this gives you the help that I was talking about, where any of the key in commands that you want or maybe might want to use or see if you could use to make things more efficient in your environment are available through here. And for example, you can type in reference. If I could spell right, that would be good. Reference. Press enter. So I can attach a reference. And when I click it, it then takes me in the help file, and it gives me all this data about that key in command. So I could still attach references through the mouse-driven interface with the icons and the tools through MicroStation, but I could also do it through key in commands. And you see here it gives you all the data about it. You can attach with a configuration variable, the file name, the model name, logical name, etc. And it gives you other data about the key in command, which you can also shorten, as you see here, to just RF equals, and then it gives you a bunch of data about using this particular command. And the same thing is true for the other key in commands as well. And by doing a little bit of work for things that you may need to solve in a production environment, you can search around here, find key in commands for things that you want to do, and either, if it's appropriate, assign them to function keys or button assignments, or utilize them further in something called the batch processor, which I mentioned earlier. Now, if I go to utilities, notice here it's got batch process. I click that, it opens up this dialog box. And from here, if I click edit, I can add files that I want to process. When I click that, I can navigate out and grab design files. And I'm going to grab a set of sample files that I created earlier, clock designs. It's just a simple clock design. In fact, one of the files is right here. And now you see here on the right where it says command file, I can either search for, by clicking here, and it'll look in this folder. So it's C, program data, Bentley, MicroStation V8i, select series, workspace, projects, untitled data. So in that folder is where by default it will create and save command files that you put together to use with the batch processor. And I actually have some that I've created earlier in preparation for this. I'm going to go into this one called TextOff-2, and I'm going to click edit. Oh, actually open it first, I should say. Open, and then I'll click edit. And you'll see it's got similar commands, in fact, the same commands what I showed you earlier. So it's got set text on. In fact, I'm going to go to my view attributes and turn the text off, even though it's, well, actually, I'm going to change it here. I just realized. I'll edit. I'm going to set it to off, since I've got text on. And then again, it's select view, like I showed you when I was doing the key and commands proper, and then update the view, and then the file design to save those settings. Now I'll save that, close the file, and when you click edit here, it's just a text file, so it'll open in whatever your text editor is, its default. And now I'm going to process the files with this command file that has the key and commands that'll help make bulk changes to those files. In this case, it's just going to turn text off in view 1 of every one of these files that I'm processing. The way you do that is you click this button, Process Batch Process Job. The wording is kind of wild there. It'll list the files that you added through this edit area, Add Files. And then you click Process, and it'll start stepping through the files one by one. And then Done. And now, when I look, so here's the last file, clock4.dgn. I'll go back to the first one, clock.dgn. You'll see that the text was turned off. So it turned the text off in view 1 of every one of these design files that I had just processed. Another thing about this window that is of importance is this. Notice initial model. So by default, you can process all models. And if I click that, the only other option you have is default model only. So if you have specific sheet models that you want to process, in other words, you don't want to deal with any of the design models, or you don't want to deal with the default model, and you don't want to deal with any drawing models, there's no way through this interface that you can isolate that. About the only way you might be able to do that, and it would take a bit of work, but you could do it, is figure out what the necessary key and commands would be to add to the batch process command file to say, select these particular models, and then from there, the key and commands to make the changes. But again, it would take a little bit of work, and you'd have to do, just like with any batch processing program, you would want to take a small subset of the files and then set up the batch process file to get the results that you want to get, but then do a test on this small subset and make sure you're getting the output you want. If not, reset your files and then go back and check your work and reset things and keep doing that until you're getting the output that you expect, and only then run the batch process on all the files you want to make the changes to. And again, just a word of caution, since it is batch processing, you'll just want to make sure that you have a good backup of any of the files that you want to batch process. Just in case something goes wrong, you can go back to your backup. So that's a batch processor, and there's lots of things that you can do with it as far as making bulk changes to your design files. And with a little bit of work and foresight, you can make quite a number of very wild changes if you needed to, over hundreds, thousands, even tens of thousands of files, if you needed to do something like that. And like I was saying at the beginning of this webinar, this is how to become a MicroStation guru, and problems that you run into that batch processing might solve to help make things more efficient and help get a submission done on time, that sort of thing. It would take a little bit of work and figure out, but that time spent, instead of opening files one at a time to make the types of changes that may need to be made, it could save you a bit of time with a little bit of work. So that's batch processing and key-in commands related to all that. Now I'm going to shift over to another area here, and under utilities, you see here it's got macro, and then I'm going to open up the project manager. So MicroStation, and that includes MicroStation V8i and earlier versions, but also MicroStation Connect, has the ability to create Visual Basic for Applications macros, which you can use to do many different things in MicroStation. Now, MicroStation's development language itself is called the MicroStation Development Language, MDL. And if you're a programmer that's oriented to the C programming language, and you have a bit of work and knowledge in that area, then you could do a lot of things with MicroStation itself and MicroStation files. But if you're not a programmer type, then Visual Basic for Applications macros, it is a programming language, but it's not as, you don't have to know as much about programming as you would if you were just doing straight programming with the MicroStation development language. So you could, through the interface, just record a macro and click on tools and things that would help make something more efficient that some of your users use in the environment. And also, if you want to learn to write and build your own MicroStation Visual Basic Applications macros, then you can do so very easily. Now, if I go to here, the Visual Basic Editor, this particular default MicroStation Visual Basic Application macro, I can go File, Open. Actually, let me just double click and it'll open it. That I forgot that part here. Just double click. And then from here I could, that's really weird. I don't know why it's doing that. So let me go back here and go, I can create new macros here and then, or a new project here. And then I can go, let me go back through the interface here, Visual Basic Editor. I go File, Import File. Projects, database. I lost my location here. Let me see. Data. That's what I want. Data. No items in my search. Where did they go? All right. Let me go back to my Windows Explorer here. And there we go. Examples. Here's where I was going. All right. So here in the interface of Windows Explorer, so if you look down at the install folders for MicroStation, this is for the V8i area. You see down in program data, not program files or program files x86, under Bentley MicroStation V8i Select Series Workspace System VBA examples, these are different examples of MicroStation Visual Basic Applications macros that come with the program. Notice it's got copy elements. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to open or add my copy element example. And now I'm going to double click on it and then I'm going to click run. Now when I do so, in the lower right, it tells me, or the lower left in the status area, copy element, select element to copy. So I click my circle here. Then it says data point to define distance or reset. So now if I move, I'll click once. And so that's a simple copy element command that was done with a MicroStation Visual Basic Applications macro. And I can right click this and I can go edit it. When I do so, here's the data. So it gives you the programming side of putting the macro together, and you can do it through the interface. You could run, the copy command, copy an element, and then record that as a macro. And then this would be the programming side of what that looks like with the commands that MicroStation Visual Basic Applications macros understands. Now, there's many other ways that you can put these together. If you know enough about it, you can use this editor to then edit the macro and add things to it for handling different parts of elements, modifying elements, modifying design files, saving files out with different names to then do other processing and things like that. And the way you do that is this. If I go back to disk here and click see, where's my macros here? V8. So, oops, that's not the one I wanted. I wanted help. So if I go to the install folder this time, not the program data folder, you see program files x86 Bentley, MicroStation V8i Select Series MicroStation, and then you see here there's this VBA concept CHM. This is a compiled HTML help file. When I open that, it gives you this help file, and this will give you all the data you need on developing and working with and putting together Visual Basic applications macros for MicroStation. So if I click here, it tells you the different objects that you can do things with and gives you a lot of help related to that. And also down below, you see it says developing code in VBA. And it gives you the interface-oriented programming, interfacing with MDL if you have MDL programs you want to interface or can use it yourself. So it gives you a ton of help here. And if you go also to MicroStation VBA, it gives you all the data that I just showed you, plus all the different objects and the different things that you can do with the different objects in a MicroStation design file, including, handling settings and things with references and all sorts of different things with the MicroStation file. Now, you could also use this to help put together specialized menus with specialized commands for things that you want to do in the MicroStation environment. It's very powerful. It's a programming language of its own in its own right. And if you have a specific problem that you want to try to solve, it would be better to orient a project or putting together a macro with that in mind, as opposed to just playing around with it to try some things. In my experience, and also others that have worked here at Axiom here in the past and currently, we almost always have to take things that we get from users of our products that run into different things with MicroStation, and sometimes put together VBA macros to help them with a particular thing that they're running into. And so that's how all of our particular VBA work is oriented, is solving some particular problem that a user that we're supporting is running into, sort of thing. And based on that experience, I would say that orientation to then developing VBA macros would be more fruitful as far as solving things that you're running into directly. So that's help on MicroStation Visual Basic macro applications. And I'm going to leave that alone now. And actually, one thing I wanted to touch on here in Connect, which I mentioned earlier but didn't step through. So MDL applications is here, but in the utilities area, here's the VBA manager in Connect. And you can open projects with that particular folder that you select and navigate out and pick up your projects. And then also, if you go to the File menu under Tools, so here's the batch processor in Connect. So instead of the utilities area or ribbon panel that you have here in Connect, it's off of the File menu. All right, so the next thing I'm going to cover is converting files. Now, in MicroStation V8i and also Connect, if you're working with AutoCAD files, either trying to open AutoCAD files and save them out as MicroStation files, or save MicroStation files out as AutoCAD files, either way, you can do it through the menu here by going File, Export, or Import, or even File Save As. And then notice when I select here, I can say AutoCAD, and I have options for doing so. I can also go File, Open, and then if I was choosing a AutoCAD file, for example, and if I go grab one, then this options area would come on. I can set different options for opening up a AutoCAD file. Make sure that it's going to have the same color, weight, and style of the lines and things like that that I expect when I finally get it open in MicroStation. Well, that's for doing one file at a time, but if you have a number of files at a time that you need to convert, from the one file format to the other, doing it one at a time may not be helpful. So MicroStation has under the Utilities menu, and in Connect, it's under the File Tools area where the batch process was. Here you have this batch converter. Now, this is similar in interface to what you saw with the batch processor, in that if you click Edit, you then add files. So if you have files that you want to convert from the one format to the other, you just grab them. In this case, I'll take my MicroStation files. And then the default output format, I can select DWG, DXF, or MicroStation V7. They're all V8 files that I'm processing now, but I can take DWG. And then also when I go to Edit, notice it has DWG save options. So when I click this, this gives me the options that I can use to save these files out as AutoCAD files. Notice under Basic, I've got the versions. So different versions of MicroStation and AutoCAD, as newer versions have come out, have left some of the older versions of AutoCAD out of being able to open or save as. So when you click here, for example, R14 is the oldest I can output as or open with MicroStation V8 iStock Series 10. And I believe AutoCAD 2016 or 2017 and newer is similar. So if you run across older files, particularly if this is more applicable for AutoCAD compared to MicroStation, that your current versions of MicroStation or AutoCAD can't open, you have legacy files, you want to be able to convert them to newer file formats or to convert them to the other format, MicroStation or AutoCAD, then you'll want to find an older version of MicroStation or AutoCAD that can open that older AutoCAD format, for example, and then save it out as a newer one, which you can then do some things with. That's just one little aside there on the file formats. Now from here, you can set the other settings. You can say the seed file to use, or a template file, it would be for AutoCAD. And then you have advanced settings for handling unsupported line styles, references, mapping line weights, entity mapping, and all these other things. And you set these the way you want. And then under remap, you can create a comma-separated value file to map levels to layers, fonts to fonts, and things of that nature. You have other settings for either processing your references and different ways of handling those when you're converting from MicroStation AutoCAD in this case. And then filters, you can set patterns for what models to process based on wildcards that you set, and also the other items that you see here. And then once you have your files set and you want to process them and convert them, then you click Process Batch Convert Job. And just like I showed you with the batch processor, you then click Convert and it'll process through all the files. And that's a way of being able to convert files from one format to the other through MicroStation's interface itself. Now, when you do this, obviously, it's going to tie up a copy of MicroStation. So just bear that in mind, because it doesn't run from outside MicroStation, unfortunately. Now, MicroStation used to have, up to some years ago, the ability to run MicroStation commands through MS Batch, and it has that ability, but it's much more limited now compared to what it used to be. So you don't have the flexibility for running things outside MicroStation like you used to have. So that's the major things in MicroStation that I wanted to cover for you here, as far as things that you can use in MicroStation's own interface, as far as its own tools that you can use to solve problems that you're running into in a production environment. And if I go back to Connect here and File, again under Tools, so remember I showed you the batch processor. Well, the batch converter is also off that same area. Same sort of setup that I showed you with V8i. And now with that done, I'm going to quickly just show you a couple of things in that Axiom has related to some of the things that I showed you, that you have tools in MicroStation that you can use, but from the viewpoint of particularly the last couple, where MicroStation Visual Basic Applications macros, you don't have to be a programmer to use Axiom tools to help you make bulk changes to design files and do some other things where it'll make it more efficient for you to handle files proper. So for example, if I go to the Axiom menu here, when you install one or more programs here in V8i, you'll get this Axiom menu, and in MicroStation Connect, you'll get an Axiom ribbon panel. So the first tool I'll open here is I'm just going to describe how to work the things through showing you the dialog box. So Global File Changer, it acts kind of like the batch processor, but it gives you a much more powerful tool set. It uses something called a key in file, which you can use to make bulk changes to things in design files like the batch processor. But you also have options for telling it what specific models you want to work with. You don't have that in the batch processor. You can also tell it to process the references. And the key in files themselves, they take the MicroStation key in commands, like I showed you in the earlier area of this particular webinar. And in addition, you have this custom menu. Now, this custom menu has tools on it that have been added by either companies paying us for a custom programming project, or people requested something so often we went ahead and added it ourselves. And one of the most popular tools, and one we added ourselves, is modified text. And this gives you the ability to modify any type of text over any number of design files that you want. You can even do text substitutions for like part numbers or street names or other designations, all in batch. It also has, because it runs MicroStation key-in commands where you're not using the MicroStation interface itself, there's a tool that comes with it here off the menu, Selection Element Selection. And this allows you to create a file called a selection file, which has named selection sets in it that you can use to help you isolate the exact elements that you want to make changes to in your design files. So for example, you make a name, and then you assign selection criteria to it. And then in the key-in file, you call that name. And so when a file opens, it then selects the elements based on the criteria associated with that name. And then you could make changes to the color, weight, style, or do other things with the elements that are selected. Once it's done processing one file, it then closes it, and then it'll go to the next file in the list, and so forth. So you can make bulk changes to any number of things, either MicroStation settings, things on down to the element and symbology level, and move things on levels. You can change all sorts of different settings and reference file attachments and their settings as well, using the key-in commands in the key-in file. And then you can also take the custom commands that you utilize here, and you can add those to the key-in files as well. So you can it expands the power of things that you can do with just straight key-in commands, and that you can also add the custom commands as part of that processing as well. So that's Global File Changer. And then another tool that's very popular for doing bulk processing of things is RefManager. This is a bulk reporting and processing tool for reference file attachments. So it gives you the ability to get a very full report on all the settings of your reference file attachments. And you can also do things like change the pathing, change level displays, level symbology, and things of that nature in bulk across your reference files. So for example, if you had a certain reference file that you needed to change the level display wherever it was attached, then with RefManager, what we'd have you do is change the level display for one instance of that particular reference. And then through the interface, you can grab that specific reference where you made that change to and say, apply the level display settings that I changed for that reference to every other instance of that reference wherever it's attached to these design files. You can also detach references in bulk, and you can modify the update sequence for handling things related to plotting, where something's plotting over the top of something when it shouldn't. And you can clone or replace reference file attachments as well. And two more things I'm going to cover real quick, and then we'll end here. Next is SpecChecker. SpecChecker gives you the ability through an external file called a rule file to be able to check specifications of your drawings down to the element and symbology level. What it does is these rules are created by a companion tool called RefManager. And this allows you to scan a set of design files, and it creates a basic set of rules based on the setup of those design files down to the element and symbology level. And then you can tweak those rules to make sure that the rules then reflect exactly what your specifications are for the drawings. Then what you do is you take those drawings as they're being produced and you run them against this rule file, and it will interactively or it can interactively take you through the design files, and as it finds elements that violates one or more of the rules, it'll take you to that element so you can then edit it directly, or you can also add a special rule called a reject rule, where you can add automated fixing to things that you commonly find are being missed in the files that you're processing. And you can automate the quality assurance checking of the specifications of your design files, and also automate adding fixes to things that are commonly missed. So that's SpecChecker. And lastly, I got Axiom in the other products area, not this MicroStation Productivity Toolkit area. These two programs together are called Title Block Manager, but I'll go into Title Block Administrator. And this gives you the ability to scan design files with the title blocks in them, in sheet files or in the sheet models, that sort of thing. And then you tell it the name of a database. It can either be a spreadsheet or a Microsoft Access database to extract copies of the data of the title block information out to. If you're using tags, it doesn't require any setup. And in most cases, tags are the way to go because those tags are tied to the project-wise metadata for like sheet numbers and sheet totals that people need to keep track of, and that ProjectWise helps you keep track of. And those, when it comes to tags, Title Block Manager doesn't need any special setup or processing. You just tell it the files that you want to grab the data from, and if it's tag sets, it'll push all that data out to a spreadsheet or an Access database, where you could then do things like update sheet numbers and sheet totals, and any other data that you want in the title box, and then shift the viewpoint of the program to update the design files from the database, and it'll do so in batch. And if you're working with ProjectWise, then it'll also issue a command to update the metadata in ProjectWise for the sheet numbers and sheet totals, and the other things that the metadata and the other metadata that can be tracked by ProjectWise. If you have, and this is less common than it used to be, but if you have title blocks that are in regular cell, simple cell, regular cell, shared cell, or simple text elements, you can also use a special tool called Upgrade Existing Text to Title Block Manager Text to set up rules in order to recognize things like the sheet numbers, sheet totals, etc., in your design files. And then once you do that and you run that process on those files, it'll then recognize that text so you can do what I explained earlier, which is grab copies of that data from your design files, your sheet numbers, sheet totals, that sort of thing, where you can then increment them or update data of your sheet numbers and sheet totals in the database, whether it's a spreadsheet or Microsoft Access database, and then push that data, updated data, back to your design files. And again, it's a bulk processing tool, so it's designed to help save you time, where if you need to make changes like this to projects where there's hundreds or thousands, even tens of thousands of files, then you could do so with this program very easily. So that's the extent of the MicroStation, or how to become a MicroStation Guru webinar. And again, from the viewpoint of how to become one, the things that I oriented you to, it will take a little bit of work in playing around with. Again, from the viewpoint of things that you want to solve in your production environment, or maybe with different things in the interface to make things more efficient for your particular users or in your environment in MicroStation. But with a little bit of work and playing around, you can get a lot of things done and make things more efficient and process files quicker than might be otherwise expected in many cases, to the point where after a while, people will start coming to you and asking you for other solutions to other things that they're running into in the production environment. And as a result, you'll become a guru. It's just a matter of a little bit of work and solving problems with the tools that I oriented you here. And it can be easily done. It just takes a little bit of work is all. So with that, I'm going to end off here in a little bit. I'm going to go to the Q&A here, and see if there's any questions that anybody has about anything I went over. And if you can find the question answer area in the interface for Zoho Meeting here, Zoho Webinar. And if you have any questions, go ahead and type them in now, and I'll answer any that I see. I'll give you here a couple minutes before I officially end off. And I don't see any, and that's totally fine. Didn't mean to put you on the spot. But I'm also going to give you an email address. If you want to get more information on our products or anything like that, you can always email us at info@axiomint.com. Let me make that taller here so you can see that. And you can ask, about there are different products we have, different services that we have, and even information about this particular webinar that I went over and other webinars we have. We may be happy to answer your questions and give you information that you might need related to your question and what you need help with. Now, let me just check. Do we have a poll here? Person that's helped me with the webinar. And there's no poll. Okay, good. So with that, thank you guys very much for attending. I really appreciate you taking the time here. I hope the information that I gave you gives you enough to where you can start looking into the things I showed you on your own and helping you out here a bit. And we'd be happy to hear feedback from you on what I went over, and if after a while you're using some of it, if it was helpful, and if so, that's great. So thanks again for your time. I really appreciate it, and have a good rest of your day here.